Welcome back, everybody. Each week we drop a couple videos here on this channel and we talk about all things Puerto Rico, entrepreneurship, real estate investing. This week we're going to jump into a conversation with Eduardo Joy. He's a dynamic entrepreneur, real estate investor, and just all-around great guy. We're on his channel with this conversation and he's actually asking us questions, but it went really well. We wanted you to see it. Stick around to the very end. We're going to have an exciting announcement about our next video where we're going to just really step it up a notch. You guys are going to love it. Dale vamos. Let's go.
Bienvenido al podcast de Joy, mi nombre es Eduardo Joy y hoy les tengo un invitado especial porque vamos a estar hablando, conociendo la historia de este individuo que está conmigo, que está haciendo cosas espectaculares en Puerto Rico. So, Rob, welcome to the show, welcome to my podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. You want to give a little bit of quick background about, you know, what you do and who you are and that sort of, don't tell too much because we're going to get into the details. But
all right, it's my pleasure though. Thank you for having me, Joy. It's always fun to talk with you and get to do stuff together. That's part of the reason we love being in Puerto Rico, is so that we can collaborate with great people like yourself. I'm Robert Krager. PR Consultants is my company. We've got a small YouTube channel. We cheerlead Puerto Rico. I like to tell people that I'm the biggest cheerleader of Puerto Rico because I'm 6'7" and 250 pounds. I dare you to find somebody who's cheerleading Puerto Rico bigger than me.
That's true, man. I appreciate that. And it's true. You do cheerlead Puerto Rico, not only... And it shows, right? You're putting in the work, you're investing in Puerto Rico, but you're also investing in the local communities, you're investing in the people. You have a group that you bring people into your house. So it's a lot of things that you're doing, and it shows your commitment and it shows that you're all in here. And so that's why one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in the podcast, because my audience are people who are considering or in the beginning stages of purchasing their first multifamily property. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that stage, you're nervous, but you're also excited. And once you do it, it could change your life. Once you see it end to end and you see the results, it definitely could be life-changing. And it will actually be life-changing to a lot of the folks in my audience. So I want to get to know about your origin story and how it is that you started to invest in real estate, because you didn't start from high school or anything like that. You kind of did some things and then you started. So tell me a little bit about how your origin story came about.
Yeah, so thank you. I would love to. I was a bad employee. Well, first I was a good employee. I was a basketball player, and I did okay at that. I wasn't NBA, but I played in Europe, and that was a fun time of life. And so then after that ended, I went into the corporate world. I got a real job, and that lasted 6 or 8 months before I kind of realized that I needed to do something on my own, be the boss.
Why was that? Is it because you, like, as a basketball player, you had freedom and like, why was it? How did you, like, figure that out so fast? And how did you have the balls to make a decision like that?
So I can't take full credit for it. It is something that from a young age, I went into business for myself. I mean, I was selling candy in the 5th or 6th grade and kind of always had something going on, whether it was a lawn business or whatever. So I've had this entrepreneurial spirit my whole life. It just was born with it, right? And then as far as making the leap, my story is that I say I was a bad employee, but I actually got in a physical altercation with my direct boss. And I was working for Florida Hospital, and so it became apparent that I wasn't going to be able to stay in that role, right? It was like, oh, that was really bad.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Carlton Sheets late at night. He would come on at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and he would have an infomercial, and it would say, buy real estate with 0 money down and, create this wealth. And I watched it for hours and hours, and he's doing these testimonials. And I just thought, well, if all of these people are making money in real estate, that's what I'm going to do. So that, like 2-3 days after the physical altercation, I went in and quit my job. Within like a week, I bought a house. Within a month, I bought a second house. So I just sort of jumped all in. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even buy Carlton Sheets
program.
I just was.
Carlton, you gotta charge her, man. You were the one who did it. So if you're looking at this podcast, go charge Robbie a couple of $1,000.
I owe Carlton Sheets a lot more than that. I'll tell you.
Okay.
For sure.
I want to highlight something that I've noticed from you and that I admire and that I think the audience here can definitely benefit from it. And that's the subtlety of you saying that you purchased your second without finishing the first.
Mm.
And that's a interesting trait and admirable trait. And because you don't, you solve things. You don't worry too much about it. Right? Like some people would not even consider jumping on another thing if this one hasn't been completely finished. And there's value into completing things, right?
Of course.
And there's value in that, and we understand that value exists. But there's great value into having the guts and the security or the willingness to go after something despite not knowing exactly all the details on it. And every time we speak, you express yourself in a matter of you act like that, right? And so can you like elaborate for the audience? Because my audience is probably scared about their first property. They're moving forward, but they're scared. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I'll try. So I did. I bought this first house really quickly, and it was a decision that I made in the middle of the night. Bought a house in a bad area. My wife begged me not to do it, and I didn't finish that first property before I bought the second one, or the third, or the fourth. I might have gone 50 before I finally sold that first property. So I had put myself in a position where I had no choice. I was only going to be able to eat what I could kill. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I needed something to happen, and the first one took a lot longer. It was a great experience. I mean, it was the only time that I've ever been a handy person. I went in with partners. We did everything in the house, from building the walls up, putting the flooring in, to the gardening. And I can remember being out there with a chainsaw cutting trees down. So we did it all. That's the only time I ever did that. The second one, which I bought within a month, I hired people to do all of that because I knew I needed to do things quicker. I had to get moving and get the velocity of money going. I don't even know if I knew any of these terms. I just knew that I needed to make some money quickly and I needed to figure this out. So this was a mindset that fortunately God had put into me that allowed me to have that courage. I had always felt that I would rather be in control of my destiny than working for someone else and allowing them to, like my father. My father worked for 40 years for a company, and they treated him well, but at any time they could have let him go. And I saw that from a young age as very scary. So where your people who watch these videos, they may have secure jobs, and that's how they've chosen to live, and that's where they see their security. I was the opposite. So my security never came from having the secure job. I didn't see it as, well, one, I wasn't a good employee, right? So I was sure that I wasn't going to make it for 40 years.
Right.
So I had to become the boss. I had to jump in. I call it jumping in with both feet. And maybe I was naive. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was willing to do things back then that I wouldn't advise people do now. But because of it, all of those steps along the way, I treated them like semesters of college. That first house, it didn't go so well for a long time. We did end up doubling our money, but it took a long time. It took like 3 years before I sold the first house. I got it rented and it cash flowed and stuff like that. But that was a great learning experience because I learned every part of the business. I learned how to build it. I learned how to do the title work, get the loan for someone. I learned all of that with that first few properties, right? Like, I mean, things that I shouldn't have done, like taking my money and putting it into somebody's bank account so they could qualify for a loan.
Right.
Because I needed that loan to close so I could eat.
Yep.
So I hope that explains a little bit about where I was back then, but I've always been someone who, when I decide to do something, I don't really look back a lot. I look forward and I jump into it and I go. And that's part of our channel on YouTube, is to have this abundance mindset and to be forward thinking. So those are traits that I've been fortunate enough that God gave me, that I try to express to people. And that's not for everybody, right? Like, so that's definitely not for everybody. I would say the vast majority of the people
Yes.
would be like, he's out of his freaking mind.
Yes.
And I probably was.
And in a sense, yes,
I probably
it's
was.
both are true.
Yeah.
It's your truth and their truth. And so the value here is taking a little bit of that courage and using it for yourself, because at the end of the day, you will figure it out, right, Rob? Like sometimes we get into thinking like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? But most of the time, when your back is against that wall,
Yeah.
most of the time people tend to figure it out.
Right.
But we never give ourselves the opportunity to be in a spot like that because it's really scary. And I'm just talking from personal experience. I get scared, all the time, and even jumping into deals and whatever. And so it's cool that you have that, your heart wired like that. And
It's served me well. I would say for the first 10 years, I used to tell myself that I would put my head under the wheel of the bus, and then I would have to do something to stop the bus from crushing me. And that was where I thrived. Like if I wasn't feeling any pressure, I might not go to work. I was young, so I was lazy. But anytime that I was really back against the wall, God always helped me to come through. So I can look back and see how God is faithful. And I try not to take credit for it, because I really think that it's something that was in me from birth, right? It's not like I am smarter or work harder than other people. I've been very fortunate that God was with me, and he took care of me,
Yeah.
right? And gave me the courage to see things differently than other people. So
Yes.
I have always looked at things a little bit differently than other people do. I think that 95, 96% of the people are going one way, and I'm swimming upstream going the other way. And that's just been my personality since I was a boy, since I was really little. So
And so let's say, so after that, you kept doing real estate, and obviously with your personality and your work ethic, you grew that and you were successful in that. How in the world did you get to live in Puerto Rico? Like how did that happen? Like whose idea was it? How the hell did you end up here?
yeah, so what happened was I'd been pretty high volume for almost 20 years. We were buying 2 houses a week consistently, right? So over 100 houses a year. And then in 2015, we only bought like 80. In 2016, we were down to like 75. In 2017, we were down to like 60 houses. So I was like doing half of what I would normally do. And I had started looking for another market. And so I had identified Puerto Rico as one of the markets. I had identified the Midwest, like Indianapolis, Chicago area, as another market. Those were the 2 competing markets. Then you guys get hit with Hurricane Maria.
Right.
And that was the deal sealer for me. Like, as soon as Maria came, I thought, I know about these hurricanes. I've been through this a half a dozen times.
Yeah.
I've profited through these hurricanes where these storms come in. I know what happens, and there's a 5-year cycle. So we came at Christmas right after Maria, expecting to see lots of damage from the hurricane, which of course we did. And then we had this like light bulb go off that there was kind of generational distress, and Puerto Rico had been in a recession for a decade. And I didn't know that at all, but I knew what was going to happen after the hurricane.
Yep.
As bad as Maria was, and it was really awful, and the lights didn't come back on for 6 months, and I don't know how people got through it. Like it was scary, it was terrible. But after Maria, anyone who wanted a job could get a job. Pre-Maria, we're in this terrible recession, and so all of the talent's leaving Puerto Rico. And now we're almost 5 years later on, and really this hurricane cycle, it's identical here as it is in Florida.
Right.
You have the recovery period that starts 6 or 8 months or a year after.
Yep.
Then you're rebuilding everything. Insurance money starts to come in.
Mm-hmm.
The government bailout money comes in,
Yep.
and so the neighborhoods start to get better. Then towards year 5, you start to build new things,
Yep.
and that's where we're at on the island. I can also remember when I first came here after Maria, there were no cranes on the island.
Right.
There was nothing being built, so there was no construction. There was nothing going on. Now you fast forward 5 years, go out here and look at the skyline. And it's littered.
Yep.
It's littered with this building. There's just a lot of stuff that's happening and being built. So that's how I ended up in Puerto Rico. It's like I just kind of latched onto this hurricane cycle.
You
Plus,
had
it
the
was a
experience.
real easy choice to come to Puerto Rico rather than to go to
Chicago.
Indianapolis and freeze. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I like to wear flip-flops and
Yep.
and fish and do things in warm weather. I don't know anything about snow and ice and
Yep.
and being cold. So
So That's a great story, man. So you, with your experience, you were able to recognize that there are patterns in anything, or in I would say in everything.
Right.
And that pattern you recognize it because there's hurricanes comes to Florida as well, right?
They do.
So you're like, if this happens here, then it probably is happening over there.
Yeah.
And then you're able to come here and then see opportunity where most people see risk, where most
Yeah.
people see disaster, where most people see chaos. Your heart wiring said, "Holy crap! There's a lot of opportunity here."
Yeah.
And then you come and you start investing in Puerto Rico, right?
Very fast.
Very fast.
Soon, I mean,
You didn't even
we came in December, and I moved here in March, and I bought my first properties in March, and we did about 60 or so quick flips. We were buying small bulks from the bank. There were lots and lots of foreclosures. There was lots and lots of distress. So we were just buying up the stuff that was available to us, 10 or 15 from this bank, 10 or 15 from that bank. And the beautiful thing with Puerto Rico is that there was such a need because of Maria, because of a lot of things. But the other thing is that Puerto Ricans want to be homeowners. So every time we got something fixed up and we were selling it with an FHA buyer, you have a line of people that wanted to buy it. So it was great. It was beautiful. And then at the end of that first year, we had a huge amount of success. We had done really well. And some of these bigger properties just started being, I looked at them as gifts, right? Like I was like, I can buy that for only that.
right.
That doesn't make any sense. So
Right.
so now I'm buying these things for a lot more money. And I can remember the first time I did that because we're just here for a year. People are still thinking I'm insane for going into Puerto
Right.
Rico, and there's just been a hurricane. And we managed to raise the money for it. We talked about this on my channel a little bit about learning. So the first time I bought something that was like $1 million, I'd never raised that much money before in my life. I had for 20 years done things that were from like $0 to $250,000, and I was really good at it. I knew where I could get that all the time, and I never had to stop. But I'd never done anything that was like $1 million, $2 million. So when we learned that, it was like another light bulb going off. It was like
It's another level unlocked.
Yeah, and we're just buying hospitality. Then we start learning about Acts. It was not even Act 60 back then, but
Just the
tourism
opportunities.
Act. Yeah, there's tons of different great things that Puerto Rico offers that help you to de-risk all of these different types of assets.
Yeah, I think the value that I see from folks like yourself coming in and doing that is eventually we get to rub shoulders, and eventually I get to be taught by you or by other folks that have been doing it for a lot of years. So I am an operator.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a new operator, but you have 20 plus years of experience, right? So being able to get knowledge from different types of folks that have a lot of experience in different markets allows me and the other operators in Puerto Rico to just grow faster, right?
Yeah.
It's just logical, right? Every person needs a coach.
Yep.
And if your coach has a lot of knowledge on it, your level of success is just going to be accelerated. And that's one of the side effects, right, that I positive side effects that I see from not only you following what you like to do and noticing those patterns and you living through to your calling, but now it's rubbing off on a different level you didn't even consider, right? It was never part of the strategy. Oh, I'm gonna get there and I'm gonna teach these guys that, and I'm gonna teach, and I'm gonna form a group, and I'm gonna get everyone in my house, and I'm gonna invite people over. That I'm sure that wasn't part of the strategy.
I don't think we had any idea that we were gonna do a breakfast at our house every Saturday for almost a year now,
right?
Or partner with so many people. So I came from a very competitive place where I'm friendly with my competitors back in Florida. We didn't do a lot of collaboration. Puerto Rico changed everything, and Puerto Rico forced me to develop the ability to have relationships with people where before I got here, I would look at you as a competitor and I would think, I can't let him in. I don't want him to know what I'm doing. But here it was completely different. There was this abundance. There was so much that needed to happen. And so I'm learning from the people that are learning from me. So yes, we try to let people in on what we're doing, and hopefully we give them value and we inspire or we encourage. But also at the same time, I'm learning from you. I'm learning from all of the people that have allowed me to come to their island and participate with them.
Yeah.
And that was that was a little bit by design, but I think mostly that was the Puerto Rico design, and it shifted me, right? Like I don't, like you said, I don't think I came here thinking that I was going to do this stuff, but the island grabbed me by the shoulders and turned me around and said, hey, you need to build relationships with these people. You need to partner with these people. You need to learn from these guys. So that's what we did. That's how we've lived.
And then from what I'm learning is the more relationships you build and the more impact you have with others, the more returns you get.
Yeah.
Because now you could leverage other people.
Yeah.
You could grow faster now. Right.
We say that we expand our business through partnerships. And that's, again, a Puerto Rico thing. I never said that before I got here 5 years ago. And now anyone who's ever met me in Puerto Rico has heard me say, hey, we expand our business through partnerships. That's just the island and taking advantage of being in the right place where God wants me to be and doing what the island wants, right? It's really hard to come to Puerto Rico and stay in your bubble. You have to embrace the community and meet people and partner with them. And so that's what I hope that I bring to the island, and that I'm a good partner to people. That is where my heart is. Mm-hmm. Yes, we profit along the way, but I think at this point, the profit isn't why I do it anymore. When I was young, I needed to eat.
Yeah.
Now, for a long time, I haven't needed to eat. I know where my next meal's coming from. For a long time, we didn't have to do this, but I've always liked what I'm doing. Now that I'm in Puerto Rico, I love what I'm doing. Like it's a next level type of thing. So I just really, really like what I'm doing here.
So, well, Rob, I appreciate you coming into the podcast and, speaking to some of my audience. Like I said, they're thinking about or in the first stages of acquiring their first multifamily that, once you get bit by this bug, it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
It's hard once you do your first transaction, even if it just generates a little bit of what, even if you break even on it.
I would say even if you lose a little bit,
right?
Treat it as a learning experience and go ahead and do the next one. And I tell people this for 3 or 4 years now. If you're thinking of buying something, thinking of investing in something in Orlando, in Puerto Rico, do it. It's the right time. Like this is 2012 right now. We have lots of room to grow, even with what's going on back in the States. We're a bit insulated because of all of the money that's come to the island, and there has never been a better time to acquire some things, to start a business, or to join some operator who's building great things like you're doing.
Yes, that's something that I love to share with my audience is they don't have to, when they think of investing in real estate, the first thing they do is they go to the classifieds to look for a property, right? You don't have to do all the work. You can partner with what you're saying, right? You can build your net worth and you can build your passive income with partners. And that way you don't have to do all the work, which is actually ultimately everyone wants to be the bank. But you could start contributing, still having a piece of ownership, but still getting that passive income. And that's something that I like to tell my audience. Rob, before we go, I always ask this to everyone, how do you define success?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So for me, success is trying to live into what God has put in front of me, right? So the Bible says that when you're a believer, that God has provided works for you in advance. And so whenever I can hear that still small voice in my head and lean into where I believe God is directing me, I find that to be successful. And usually money comes, and usually friendships come. So that's how I would say that's what makes me successful is when I can do that. And I don't always do it, but when I can, I feel successful.
Sometimes that voice is really low,
really small.
Sometimes it's did I hear something?
Sometimes I argue with him and say, no, that's not what you meant. Or sometimes he'll say, hey, here's the plan. And I'll just say, hey, Jesus, get out of the way. I've got this. I've got a plan. And then that doesn't usually generate success. So that's how I find success.
Yeah. Well, Rob, I appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure to having you in the podcast.
Man, you guys, thanks for staying to the end. I hope you loved that as much as we liked doing it. Here's our announcement, and we are so excited that on our next video, we're going to be interviewing and sitting down and having a conversation with the flipping genius himself, Jerry Norton. So look for that to come out this Thursday.